I emailed a teacher to say thank you, and he posted it on Facebook saying I really needed this. What's something you've said done that you didn't expect to have such a big impact? I have a very close family friend that is about 84 years old now. He's always telling me stories of his time in the Navy and what it was like growing up in the 1930s. He would always point out places and talk about what they used to be and all the different places he worked as a kid. Back then the kids would get odd jobs that paid 10-20 cents doing random stuff on the farms around town. One time he told me that his favorite job on the farm was when he got to help make the ice cream. He went on for about an hour talking about it. I didn't think much of it at the time, but a couple months go by, and I'm at the mall doing my Christmas shopping when I happened upon one of those $30 do-it-yourself ice cream makers. So I think back to that story and figure what the heck and pick it up for him. Never bought him a Christmas present before, but it seemed like a good idea. So I give it to him for Christmas and tell him it reminded me of that story about making ice cream on the farm, and figured he could whip up some of his favorites. He instantly started crying and thanking me, saying it was the best gift he's ever received. I figure it must have really brought him back to his childhood. I just figured he could make ice cream again. I had no idea it would mean so much to him. Of all the stories here, this one just hits home the most. My grandfather was a doctor in family medicine for years. He made house calls until the day he retired, well into his 70s. For his 90th birthday, we put out ads in the local newspaper asking for former patients to write with their memories, collecting hundreds of cards from former patients and a few from nut jobs. On his birthday, he opened up a mailbox we had bought and decorated for the occasion. Reading the first few cards, his eyes welled up with tears, and he managed to squeak out, "I thought they had forgotten." He parceled out those cards, reading a few every day, and shortly after he finished reading them he passed away. I can't think of a better way to go than to end your life reliving the legacy of care and compassion that he embodied all his life. When I was in high school, I came home and I told my mom that the lunch she made me tasted great. She hugged me really hard and told me she was having a crappy day and that me appreciating the small things she does for me really makes her feel better. I was kind of shocked. I just thought the sandwich tasted good. I'm a barista at Starbucks. A couple of weeks ago a girl was on the phone, clearly upset. I took a risk. Anything against company policy is a no-no, and wrote "it's going to be okay" on her cup. The next day she came in and said that I really made her day and she was incredibly grateful for the gesture. Feels good, bro. After my Xbox red ringed, I took it into Best Buy because I had a warranty. I didn't have any of my save files backed up and I was really bummed out about it. At the customer service desk a man named Dennis was working. He could tell that I was sad about losing all of my save files, so he offered to transfer my files from the old hard drive to the new one for free. This took a few hours but he didn't mind. He went out of his way to help me out. Anyway, I actually took the customer service survey on the receipt and said all sorts of nice things about Dennis and how great of an employee he is. A month later I went into that same Best Buy and found my review posted on the wall and Dennis had gotten promoted. My mom and I aren't very close, mostly because she is an alcoholic and has been most of my life. I live 2,000 miles from her now, but we still talk every couple weeks and on special occasions. Last year around the beginning of the year, her basement flooded and caused quite a bit of damage. Her insurance covered most of it, but it needed to be repainted, and she couldn't afford it. My birthday rolled around in February, and she called and asked me what I wanted. I told her I was okay, but she kept insisting. Finally, I told her, how about for my birthday, you buy yourself the paint for your basement, and I'll get a friend of mine to come help you do it. She started crying and saying how great I was, and apologizing for a lot of the stuff she did to me over the years. She hasn't had a single drink since that day. Such a small thing to me, but results were amazing. For our friends outside the USA, 2,000 miles, 3,218.7 km. Yeehaw. I used to teach computer classes to senior citizens at a community center. Oh, the stories I could tell. But one student named Jakes was 76 years old and his kids had bought him a laptop. A note to kids: if you ever buy your grandfather a laptop, buy him computer lessons. 2. After sitting for a few minutes and talking to Jakes, I found out he'd been married for many years but was a widower, and that his favorite granddaughter was going to college in California, and that he'd grown up in France. And after trying to explain all the things you can do with a computer, I finally just told him that you can do just about anything in the virtual world that you can do in the real world. And so help me, God, I quoted a Microsoft commercial. Where do you want to go? Today is implied. He thought he was being cute, I guess, when he said, Paris. I googled Paris, and he was impressed by the photo of the Eiffel Tower and all, and the Google map. But then I told him I could do so much better than that. I asked him for the address of the house he grew up in, and then I took him on a virtual walk down the street where he'd lived as a child, a town he hadn't seen since he left as a 20-something. He pointed out where his father had owned a bakery. It's a camera shop now. The church where he had his first communion. It's still there. And the corner where his school used to be. Vacant lot. Then, I set up a Gmail account for him, and a Skype account, and about 15 minutes and a flurry of text messages later, he was video chatting with his favorite granddaughter. He said it was like Buck Rogers. But the coup de grace was when I found him a new fishing boat on eBay. Education is all about showing someone the possibilities. Thanks for this. Every time I hear someone doing their whole Windows sucks, Skype sucks, etc. routine, I remember that these tools empower millions to do things that were literally science fiction in the books I read as a teen. I met my current best friend over a game. If digital friends can be best friends. It was about 4 years ago, and we had been in a clan together. Eventually the game got boring, but we would still talk to each other on a free website that had a chat. Skip ahead 2 years, we hadn't talked for a long while. I stumbled upon the chat and noticed he was online, which made us start talking again. With that, we restarted the process of talking daily. After about a month or two of talking, he thanked me randomly. I asked him what for. Apparently his mother had died from a heart attack before we started talking again, and nothing was going right for him. He was attacked by gangs several times, his girlfriend's parents died, and his father was becoming distant. He told me I saved him from suicide, and that surprised me. I had no idea, since he talked to me as if nothing was wrong. Nowadays we talk over text or Xbox Live. He has proposed to his girlfriend, and has invited me to be his best man. I had a long chat last night with my roommate, who's a therapist, about how she feels online relationships are dangerous because they prevent people from going outside to form real connections with people. I will show her this post to prove to her that people you know online are still people, and it's still meaningful. The summer before I started high school, I caught up with my first grade teacher and thanked her for teaching me how to read. Unlike most of my ilk, 18yo in an urban setting, I love to read and I can almost directly point to her because of it. She cried and hugged me, saying that I was the first person to ever tell her that. Mrs. Gaston was an awesome person. As the kid of a first grade teacher, I'm sure Mrs. Gaston still remembers that and will appreciate your kind words for years to come. That was really sweet of you. I have a story from today that fits this nicely. I work as a rental agent for a complex of townhomes, most of which are new or aren't even built yet, so right now most of what I do is finding renters and expediting the move-in process. The paperwork part. I rented the model unit, my office, right out from under my own feet, which was fine until something screwed up on the renter's end and the lady needed to move in this weekend. I went into work now worry later mode and drummed up a ragtag moving team to help me rehome the model furniture to a different unit. We got that crap done, record time and without a hitch. But then the lady calls me, upset. More stuff has screwed up on her end, and now she doesn't have movers for move-in day. Her U-Haul is rented and packed up, but she has no one to help her unpack it. She was near tears, I could tell, and without thinking about it, I volunteered the people who had helped me move. Once again, we got it done with a quickness. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Virginian hospitality, I guess, but she pulled me over and thanked me in tears. Apparently, her reason for the move was that her husband had left her and her young kids for another woman, and this townhouse was their start over without him home. She had come here with him not too long ago, from the deeper south, and was equally surprised that a white girl and her white family friends, except for the one token black guy, had gone out of their way to help a black family and thankful for the help that she otherwise didn't have in a place that she hadn't lived in very long. It just goes to show, I guess, be good to people. It could mean more to them than it does to you, and we could all use a few good deed points. Unrelated, I love my job. I had a guitar teacher years back. He did lessons out of his home. He was totally awesome too. One day before we started a lesson, I told him what a great teacher he was. He told me he had been thinking about quitting teaching recently, and it had really helped to hear that. Something so simple as a couple sentences, and you both walk away feeling great from it. It's so easy to be kind, yet it seems too rare these days. As simple as it is also something difficult. Surprisingly, it can take a lot of courage to tell someone they are doing a great job. At least for me it does. Maybe it's just me. When I was probably in grade 8 or so, we had to do one of those generic "who is your hero" style essays. I wrote mine about my dad because he has been a substantial influence on my life and I don't respect anyone in the world more. I handed the essay in, got it back, and it was banished to being left in my binder for the rest of eternity. Or at least that's what I thought. After doing homework once while sitting in the living room, I left my binder open on the table and forgot about it. The next day, while my dad was still at work, my mom told me that sitting on the top of the stack of papers in my binder was this essay, and my dad had read it because he had seen I had gotten a good mark. She told me that he had cried, something that he never does, because this essay meant so much to him. She said he wanted to take it with him to work so that he could look at it anytime he had a bad day to give him that extra motivation. He was truly touched by this essay that I had written for school, something that I didn't plan on showing him. It was an amazing thing to realize that something so simple as telling your dad that you really appreciate him can be so important and beneficial to that person. Back in 7th grade, a new guy came to my school. It was his first day at the school, and it was lunchtime. He had no idea where to sit since he didn't know anyone. Without even knowing who he was, I invited him to sit with my friends and me. Fast forward 7 years, and he's still a good friend of mine. A few weeks back I was hanging out with him and some other friends, and we were talking about how we all met. He asked if I remembered how we met, and I didn't. He told me that story and said that I was the first friend he made at the new school. Felt pretty good to hear that I made such a big impact on him back then. Because of your post, I just sent a Facebook message to the high school teacher that made the most difference in my life. I majored in the subject that she taught, and now I have a job in a relevant field. Thanks for this. Good, teachers love knowing they helped someone. There was a girl in my university program who was very quiet and shy. I often would say hi and chat with her, nothing too crazy, but I just wanted her to feel welcome. For my birthday, she surprised me with a gift and a card telling me how much she appreciated me reaching out to her. She said that it was hard for her because she was so shy, and that me just saying hi made a big difference. It was the most touching note I've ever received, and I still have the card. Upvote because being shy and socially challenged sucks. I got laid off from my first job out of college, and my boss was really upset about it. I had only been there for 5 months. The company was getting rid of its newest employees and hiring free interns, illegally. My boss at this company was the greatest dude. He was visibly upset all day. We talked back and forth afterward, and he sent me some links to job sites where I could look for work. Seriously a solid guy. In one of my emails to him, I told him I didn't blame him at all for having to lay me off, and that the company was just in dire straits. He responded something like, "You can't possibly know how much this means to me." I guess my response didn't have the hugest impact, but it's nice to know our friendship went beyond the office. I have the reverse, an action that had a positive impact on me. I played on my high school's varsity volleyball team, and the girls on the freshman team often hung around the gym while waiting for their practice to start. I can't even pinpoint how we started talking now, but when I was a junior I was friends with one of the freshmen. When spring rolled around, it turned out that she ran track as well, which was my other big sport. Naturally we formed a bond, but I didn't know how much I'd impacted her until senior night for volleyball. Each of the senior girls had a cardboard cutout of a volleyball for people to sign, and the girl, Cami, requested mine. but told me not to read it until she walked away. When she left, I saw that she'd written that I'd been a great role model for her and she aspired to be like me someday. I was floored. I'd just been being nice and friendly to a teammate that I genuinely liked and had no idea she looked up to me like that. It made all of the drama of a high school volleyball team totally worth it, plus made me feel like I was a positive influence on someone else. I won't forget that. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Wish I had somebody to do that for me. Late to the game, but 10 years ago my best friend's mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. She fought hard, but it eventually became clear that she did not have much time to live. She hadn't told her son, who was living outside of the country, how bad it was until my mom made her call and tell him to come home as soon as possible. My mom flew down to be with her in what we all knew would be her final days. She had insisted that she didn't want me and my brother to come because she didn't want us to see her like that. I sat down and wrote her probably the longest letter I have ever written in my life. It was really hard writing down the words that might be the last she read, and expressing how I was honored to have such an amazing person have such an influence on the person I had become. I signed the letter "Your second son." My mom flew down and at this point she was too weak to read or do much. My mom read her the letter and according to my mom she had a smile on her face the entire time. When she was done reading, my friend's mom shed a tear and told my mom it's okay. She died that night and those were among her last words. My friend flew into the country the next morning. He hadn't made it back in time to see his mom. I like to think that my letter comforted her even though she couldn't see her son one last time. TLDR. I wrote a letter to my friend's mom that was dying of cancer. Her son didn't make it back in time to see her, but she was able to have my letter read to her and I like to think it provided her with some comfort in her final moments. I'm not one to tear up by reading things on the internet, but this made me. I blame hormones. Those seem like a good excuse. In middle school we went on a field trip and on the first night there we played a huge game of capture the flag. There was this one boy who was always a bit of a loner and never had many friends, so me and friend decided to really include him in the game. Told him to guard the flag and after we won we told him he was the MVP of our team. After the trip when we were back at school, one of the teacher supervisors from the trip pulled me aside and told me that this boy's mom had called her to say how happy her son was when he got back. He had told his mom all about being MVP of the game and was so excited. I have never felt so good about myself knowing that by doing something so simple I had made this boy's trip unforgettable. This is a really nice story. Thank you for posting it. I just wish I dunno, I can almost experience these things in these threads. The emotions are beautiful. Similar to your post, when I was in high school, my all-time favorite teacher was my history teacher. I was always a smart kid, but my issues at home kept me from getting the grades I should have gotten. I ran with the wrong crew, which didn't help. My history teacher inspired me to try my hardest and to apply myself. I always loved history, and we would quiz each other for fun. He became a good friend of mine. It's because of him that I'm a year away from becoming a history teacher myself. He left in my senior year because his brother was sick. We were all very sad, and I never got to see him because he was away. We would talk on the phone every once in a while and exchange emails, but it wasn't the same. He came to the graduation and congratulated me on my turnaround. It became very apparent that his brother wasn't sick. He had gotten cancer my junior year, but was fighting it, still in high spirits. A month later, I sent him an email saying how much he meant to me and all the other students. I told him he was my inspiration and that he was a great man and a great teacher. He passed away 2 weeks later. I like to imagine he was able to read that email before he passed, and it showed him how much of a difference he made on his students' lives. He will forever be my inspiration. In 9th grade, I had an incredible world history teacher who happened to get arrested in a drug sting close to the end of the semester. It happened so suddenly, and the teachers at the school were so overworked to begin with, that the school opted to provide a filler substitute and forwarded our work to our original teacher, who was out on bail. We were not allowed to have any contact with him, which was hard for our class, who had really connected with him. When our substitute administered our 10-page final exam, he hinted that if we wanted to write our teacher a letter, the higher-ups probably wouldn't notice if we did it on one of the pages in the middle. Each of us wrote him a letter of encouragement, letting him know how positively he had impacted us. When we got our exams back, he doodled a quick message on the front, and each of our letters were ripped out of the packet. He had kept them all. Cut to 10 years later, and he came into the deli I was working at and I immediately recognized him. He smirked and asked which year he had me as a student, and I replied, 1999, with a smirk of my own. He said that was a huge misunderstanding, and that he was teaching again at a different school. Who knows? When I was in college, I took an archery class for a gym credit in my program, and I sat down next to this sort of weird looking kid who was wearing a cloak. Yes, a cloak like in medieval stories and huge Coke bottle bottom glasses. I said hey and smiled awkwardly because I thought he seemed cool, and I'm also a socially awkward individual. Sun cloak or glasses though. Seth said hi back, and that's when we knew we'd be awesome friends. We started to hang out and slowly I began to learn more about her and her horrible home life. Nothing she told me could make me leave her side though, because I'm the kind of stupidly loyal friend who won't leave even though I probably should. Fast forward a few years, about 4, and she tells me that our friendship was the longest one she's ever had. Nobody ever stuck around long enough to give a crap, and that I was reason she was still alive, because she knew I'd be there for her even when her family wasn't. She doesn't hide behind her cloak anymore and she's doing awesome, and it still trips me out that just doing what I thought normal friends do gave her that much motivation and courage that she turned her whole life around. One time at my old job, as some sort of dumb team building exercise, the district manager decided we were all going to send out compliment grams to each other. Everyone would get a piece of paper on which to write a compliment and later it would be delivered. My favorite person in the building sat right next to me, so I thought I'd write one to her. But then I figured she was fairly popular already, so she'd probably get a lot. Instead, I wrote a compliment to the dorky guy across from me. This guy was awkward. He had teeth everywhere. He was constantly telling weird stories about his dad being in the KKK, of which he did not approve, resulting in his life being in danger, and of him defeating his obnoxious roommate with karate. He was always trying to get people to friend him on his horrible MySpace, which was covered in glitter whatevers and played horrible songs. He always stood too close to people when he talked, and breathed heavily through his mouth between words. He refused Christmas cards because they were pagan, but if it had a Bible verse on it, he'd cut out the Bible verse and keep it, then throw away the rest. He was every kind of weird, but he was kind. So I wrote a compliment about how he was always very kind to me and was an excellent lasagne cook. From the potluck, he spent the entire day awkwardly hounding everyone to try his lasagne. I said he was a great person to have on our team, which was also true, because he was loyal. When they were handed out, it was just like stupid candygram day at elementary school. All the best looking people, including my favorite person, got tons of compliment grams and most everyone else got one or none. I got none. When the guy across from me got his, he was shocked, and then he started crying. Then, and this was totally out of character for him, he didn't make it awkward for me. He just smiled and pinned the compliment on his cubicle and said thanks. Everyone else on our team then wrote compliments on post-its and brought them to me throughout the rest of the day. I didn't feel like I deserved it, but it felt kind of nice. You are the best. Similar thing for me. I had awesome teachers my senior year of high school and was very grateful to all of them. I bought my two favorites, Calc and English flowers, and gave them thank you cards. My English teacher, who was this towering, intimidating guy, told me later that the card I gave him made him so happy he cried. I was definitely not expecting that. I regret that I never had the chance to thank the teacher who made the most difference in my life. Her name was MRS Krohn and she was my high school German teacher, but just for a little bit. She was gothy and quirky, and a little absent-minded, but very nice. I remember one day she came and taught class with a shirt that was outside in because it had 666 on the front. And when asked why she was wearing it, she said that it was her only clean shirt, cause she hadn't gotten round to doing the laundry. Some people might think that totally unprofessional and stupid of her, but to be honest, I'm glad I saw a person like her doing a job like teaching. That wasn't what made a difference in my life though. At the time I was suffering from depression and I was cutting myself. The arms mostly. I had been doing it for months and hid it from everyone because I was embarrassed that I was even doing such a thing. I wore this black long sleeve jumper every day so people wouldn't see. I don't know if she just figured it was too warm to be wearing a jumper or something, or that she had an inkling about what she might find underneath. But she asked me to take it off after class was over. She saw the marks and asked if I was okay. I told her I just fell. She went on and said she knows how dark the place I am in is, and that she went through it herself. She told me that I was always there to talk to if I needed it. I repeated that I just fell, then left. I wish I could slap the person I was. She was the first person to reach out to me, and I didn't accept her help. She never reported me, which I am thankful for because I think it might have broken my mother's heart. She just let me know she was always there. Then one day she was gone. She wasn't working with the school anymore. I think she might have just been a placement for her studies, but I honestly cannot remember. I never realized it before she was gone, but knowing she was there, someone to talk to if I ever got the courage to speak up, gave me a peace which I hadn't felt for a very long time. I noticed the void when she left. Even though I barely knew her, I've often thought about her and looked for her on the internet, somehow hoping I'll find her and be able to write the thank you letter I have always wanted to. Alas, I can't find her. A part of me hopes that she might see this, however unlikely, and know that she changed my life for the better. Schools keep records of every single teacher. Go ask them how you can reach her. After I graduated from high school, I got an email from one of the girls in my class. She was really sweet but also pretty shy and I never really talked to her too much. In her message though she told me that sophomore year I said something that saved her from killing herself. She never told me what it was and to this day I still do not know. All I know is that whatever it was I was really glad that I could make a difference for this girl and help her out. My old roommate was a caretaker for a severely retarded person. I was just crashing on his couch for a couple of weeks. One day he was out doing something and had the guy in the van with him. He came home and asked if I'd come out and say hi. I did, and we chatted for a little while. I made his day by simply talking to him and being nice. He talked about it for quite some time afterward. According to my old roommate, it was kind of an eye-opener. Really, little things you do can make a big difference. I made an It Gets Better video for children of hoarders, and I've talked about it in various other incarnations. For the last couple years or so I've been getting at least 2 emails a month from teenagers and young adults telling me that I helped realize that they're not alone. A couple even got the courage to get out of their situation. As gratifying as that is, it's still very painful to read those emails. One day at the beginning of last summer, I saw a sign out front of my old elementary school that said happy retirement to Mrs. D. She had been my kindergarten teacher. I'm 21 now, so a while back, I went and got her a pretty potted plant and a card, and brought it in that afternoon hoping she would still be there. She instantly recognized me even though the last time she'd seen me was when my sister was in elementary school, which was when I was maybe 12. She cried and we hugged and she told me all the goofy things I did as a kid. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. Later, one of the office ladies told me that I was one of the only old students to come say goodbye. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.